Hello, welcome everyone to the Bcamp podcast. I am Richard Carey, and today we have with us Joe Considine, who is the Director of AI Business Development at Vivid Cloud. We're so glad to have you here. Thank you for joining us, Joe.
Excellent. Yeah, and to provide everyone a background on me, I spent 16 years in the data field with IBM and a couple of other firms, Teradata, Calibra. And what I was doing is I was implementing everything data governance, data warehousing, data lake, analytics, etc. And then for the past year, I've been doing AI business development. I did an educational sabbatical last year for 8 months and learned all about AI with 3 high-powered courses at 3 universities, at MIT and University of Texas, and a Microsoft hands-on course. And now what I do is I lead our AI practice at Vivid Cloud. Vivid Cloud is 100 engineers. We're based in Brunswick, Maine, and all around New England. And we're engineers. We've been around for 7 years, and we do software development for companies to help them migrate their website to the cloud, or help them do robotics or DevOps or IoT. But now the biggest area of growth for us is AI, Gen AI. And what we do generally is we'll go into companies and help them implement Gen AI. It's a very exciting technology to use as a consumer when we use things like ChatGPT and Microsoft Copilot, but those are just individual productivity tools, and they only work about 80% because they have to be tuned. So our general use case is we go into a particular enterprise. So let's say it was an insurance company. An insurance company, one of the projects we did for an insurer is we talked to the underwriters, and we said, okay, let's talk to some of your senior underwriters who have done this for 20 years and create a personal assistant just for them using their data. And then for 30 days or 30 to 60 days, we have those subject matter experts work with the tool and use something called prompt engineering, which is basically asking better English questions to help tune the AI. But then the Python developers do things like RAG and RAG plus graph and lots of cool software engineering to tune it as well. So after that, you can roll it out to larger groups of audiences, and now you get the real benefit of junior underwriters can use this tool and get really good questions answered, and it gets performance from the 80% level up to the upper 90% level. But it is a human in the loop tool. It's something to make humans in a particular expertise more productive, and it's typically set up for enterprises for their specific proprietary data in their enterprise. There's lots of other industries we've done this into as well. Hope that was useful as a background.
Yeah, no, that's awesome. Thank you. It's fun to hear about your journey a little bit and Vivid Cloud as well. And I'm curious, how did you first start getting into AI?
Yeah, last year, I just said, you know what? I mean, everybody saw what happened 2 years ago, right? With ChatGPT set the world on fire. And I said, this is a critical moment. I feel like it's the 1860s. I'm in St. Louis. They just built the railroad. And there's going to be enormous opportunities around the railroad. So I actually left my job and took 8 months to learn about this stuff because I think, and my extensive experience in data is very useful because really to do any of these use cases, you still have to start with good data. You still, all those data things that we do, garbage in, garbage out, and all that data governance still applies. But now it's to apply this technology, this new exciting technology to business problems where companies really are getting tremendous competitive advantage to do this. And it's now, of course, it's not just text that I'm talking about. It's also video and images and so on.
Yeah, I love this. And I'm impressed and I guess just impressed that you just quit your job and went back to school to learn something. So I'd be curious to hear about this experience. What kind of school did you go to? What kind of classes did you take? How useful was it? Tell us about that experience.
Oh, sure. Yeah. So 3 courses. One was from MIT, and that was strategic implications of AI, all really geared towards C-level. So there were people all around the globe on this course. I mean, they were all video courses, right? But it was all about how do you take advantage of this technology. And then as my paper, I ended up writing a process for developing a center of excellence at a company. I did an insurance company. It's something I had a lot of experience in. How to, basically take companies through this process to implement this technology successfully. And I talked a little bit about how that's done. The other courses I took one that was a Microsoft ChatGPT hands-on course from the University of Texas, Austin, that was 7 months of on-time, hands-on, first doing, just English language prompt engineering type of thing. And then it got into heavy C code. Not C code, a Python code. I did a Python primer. I was able to do all the labs. It got sophisticated into RAG and all this stuff. But I'm not really a coder. So it's like I'm not a professional coder. I did the demos and labs and such. But it got me to really understand the technologies. And for instance, RAG is cool, right? Because it allows you to put your data into the LLM. But graph is something that's great for particular use cases. It adds hierarchical capabilities to text, right? So the idea is it can go and say, understand itself automatically hierarchical relationships within textual information. Like for a doctor, a project I did for a doctor, it was able to understand that a certain medicine is part of a class of medicines, which helped in the way he wanted to use ChatGPT. It basically made GPT work much better for his application. The third course I took was a general data science course, also from University of Texas, Austin, and that went for 8-9 months, and that was covering everything from linear regression, multiple regression, k-means classification, and then neural networks, all the way to convolutional neural networks, which is all about computer vision, right? And that complemented, I had experience a long time ago doing computer vision, which was back when we had to do it, like tell the computer how to do it, right? And do template matching and stuff. But now, of course, you throw millions of images at these LLM tools, and it's able to find a cat in an image, right? And it's able to, draw me a picture of a cat, playing piano, and boom, it does it, right? So that was really to get a good kind of overview of all the different technologies, because as I go into clients, Gen AI is the coolest thing that everyone wants to talk about, right? But when you evaluate the business problem, the business use case, and then you get to it, you don't want to say, I only have a table saw, I don't have screwdrivers anymore. There's lots of other tools, and you use the right tool for solving the task at hand. And I love the table saw analogy because you can lose a finger if you don't apply it correctly. So you want to apply it correctly. But it's exciting technology, and just an understanding of all those different types of, I call it generally machine vision, machine learning and data science is very useful because you want to apply the right thing. Now, the other thing I've done as an AI consultant is I go to a lot of shows. I've been to 8 shows in the last 5 months. So I've learned about a lot of other tools, because the thing is, when you find a business case, you don't always want to invent it from scratch. You don't always want to just write software. Sometimes there's a really cool tool. Like I discovered this tool that's a metadata discovery tool using Gen AI Illumex, which I like to use. And it will basically, for the data problem, there's this thing, data governance is always about the metadata and understanding all the metadata, right? And there's these data catalog tools, like I worked for Calibra a while ago. And there's better ones now, Atlan and Elation. But the thing is that any of them only do 25% of the problem. And now the idea is to put Gen AI on the task to understand the semantic and the hierarchical relationship inherent in metadata, which is huge in any enterprise where you're trying to do a new analytics problem and look at large, lots of data sources. So that's a really cool tool that I like now because, hey, it was cool. Why write one, right, when there's one that's already available?
Yeah, I think that makes sense. I like that. And you mentioned, I like this analogy as well of like tools being dangerous in some cases. Do you have any examples of fails, either from like your projects in school or like things that you've seen that people are doing where you're like, ooh, that's dangerous?
Yeah, one of the things about Gen AI in general is it has this thing called hallucination. And it's just, if any of you have played with ChatGPT or any of the other tools, Claude or what have you, you ask questions and sometimes, it's just trained off the entire internet. So sometimes it can come back with completely bogus answers that sound very, very plausible. So if you're the casual user, you can get fooled because it sounds really good. And, I have examples where you tell it to write, give me the specifications for a specific product, and it will create specifications for a product that doesn't exist. So you can imagine if a company used that for their customers, like they don't want to give them a totally fictitious information for a product that doesn't exist. It uses its imagination. But it is something. So how do you combat that? Well, you combat it a lot of ways. The prompt engineering, you can ask better questions to get rid of a lot of those cases. Because you say, oh, no, that doesn't, you can ask more detailed questions or you can screen them out. And that's what that process of having an SME on any use case is really going through that process. So hallucination is a big thing, but there's also guardrails, which is, you can't say, tell me how to build a nuclear bomb. Oh, no, we don't want to answer that question, type of thing. So, there are a lot of things with it. Now, the tools are getting better. There's new LLMs that come out every week, but they're expensive. So the other point is, a lot of times what we'll do is we'll develop on something like Anthropic Claude, which is great because there's large context windows. So you can put a lot of data into it without having to do a lot of special things. But it's expensive to run a production. So a lot of times we'll say, okay, we got the prototype running there. Now we're going to move it to a small language model, which there's now a lot of, Amazon and Google and others have these SLMs, which are domain specific and a lot more cost effective. So they'll run it 10 times cheaper. So you want to but when you do that, now you want to run it over. Now you want to make sure it gets the same answers or just as good answers and so on. So there's a lot of software engineering to do that.
Yeah, that's very interesting. What, as you guys are thinking about, hiring engineers that have these capabilities, and you may not be the one hiring it, so feel free to skip this question. But what are you guys looking for when you're hiring engineers for this growing field?
Well, certainly Python is the language of choice. So if you're engineers, you want Python experience, right? Mm-hmm. That's the language of data science. There's others as well, but that's the one that, is 90% of the use cases, right? So that's the thing. But it's also just, and sometimes it's full data scientists when you want to actually do the real deep data science, right? Mm-hmm. But the thing is, with the large language models, a lot of times you don't have to do that core machine learning, because that was a really hard thing, to do the full machine learning, developing your own model. It's very detailed and it's very costly because to run it and, to develop the inference models and all that is, it costs a lot of money. So unless you have an extra billion in your bank account that you're looking to get rid of, maybe don't do that, right? So now the idea is really you need Python skills, you need LangChain skills, you need RAG plus graph skills, you need all those things. So what do I look for? I look for, when I'm hiring, I'm looking for people who either have that skills or they're very technically curious where they will go and figure it out, because no one has 10 years of Gen AI experience. The stuff has only been existing for 2 years, right? Or thereabouts. People have data science, and that's useful, but I just see more usefulness of just use the LLMs and not have to develop the true data science heavy lifting out of the box, because that's, those are 6-9 month development projects. They're not, and the Gen AI stuff is 30, 60, 90 days and you're done. It deploys to production, But there's other things. It's just the role of prompt engineering is huge. Like we have a lady that does that. Because the thing is, you get that the beauty of the LLM and just, developing it for a specific use case, like I mentioned earlier, the insurance underwriter, is to have that expert. He knows insurance underwriting, so he knows when the thing is hallucinating. And right? So you need to have him tune it. But there's a way to tune it correctly, and that's prompt engineering. So having a prompt engineer help him with that, there's a lot to prompt engineering. You have to ask the question differently. You have to. So that role, which is a customer interface role, just working with the SME who is not a software engineer and just helping them do that. And then, of course, you interact with the Python people that do the heavy lifting, all the Pythons, and RAG and Graph and all that kind of stuff. You typically need both for a project. It's not, depending on the scope of it, there's lots of things you can do with just prompt engineering, but on most of the projects, you need both.
Yep. Yeah. Interesting. So you actually have a role for prompt engineer?
Yes. Yes. And that's typically
that's
a
the title?
customer facing role.
Interesting. Interesting. That's cool. I hear a lot of people talk about prompt engineering, but it's like I haven't seen an actual role yet for a prompt engineer, so that's cool. So I'd be curious to understand, you mentioned the insurance underwriting. What are some of the other like common challenges that companies that you're talking to are having, or maybe like a favorite use case that you saw?
Sure. I've got many, but I'll talk to one about in healthcare, because this is easily relatable and it's an easy project to do. This was for emergency room nurses at a large hospital system in the Midwest. Said their ER nurses have 200 procedure manuals, and they're in 3-ring binders somewhere back behind the nursing station, what have you, right? So the project there was to create a bot on the phone so the ER nurses could ask questions of the user manuals and get answers in English. What a cool thing. And that was a small project, because it was just, it's not that much data, the 200 manuals for, asking it. But the key part was having, we had 2 senior nurses work with it for 60 days. And then we had a prompt engineer work with them and, help it get better answers, right? And then we had some software, of course we had Python people loading all the data and there was some tuning on that end. But after 60 days, we were able to roll it out to a large audience of, it was a dozen of more junior nurses. And now it's a tool that augments their nurses, right? They can use it in production. Now, it is not replacing a nurse, right? It is a human in the loop solution. So the human gets the answer, and it's not 100%, but it's in the upper 90s. So it's a tremendous productivity enhancement for the nurses, right? And so they get, and you know how nurses are, it's burst activity. When the ER, all of a sudden there's something bad happens, and a lot of people in the ER, and they're overwhelmed, and they need to know this answer right now, right? And so it's able to do that. So that is one that had tremendous business value and is easy to do. It's not like that's the key to finding business cases is ones that have big value, that have an acceptable level of risk, right? So that's a good one. But there's lots of other ones in different industries I could chat about as well. But the chatbot thing is huge because it applies to almost any use case. Think about it. In any enterprise, they have those 20 experts where they say, "Oh, that guy leaves, boy," or everybody goes to ask Charlie because he knows, right? All right, what are you trying to do? You create the assistant for Charlie, and then it becomes an even better assistant for everything that people go to Charlie for.
Yeah.
And Charlie could be a lot of different roles. But it's not like I want to assure people, or I guess calm some of the hype. The hype says this is bots that are replacing all people and will all be unemployed in 3 years. It's just not the case. It is an assistant. And you have to look at it as it's something to make you more productive. For that ER nurse, it's not replacing the ER nurse, of course, but it's like they get value out of it because they can be more productive because they're sitting there, like how much time are they wasting when they're trying to do triage and they don't know this, and they can get it done quicker. So it's about making people more efficient. And if you think that they're taking your job away, no. Somebody that uses this tool better takes your job away, So you want to, if you're an uprising professional in whatever your role is, you want to embrace this technology because it's useful. But the companies need a center of excellence to help coach people through this process to make it successful, because it's not If you just say, "Oh, I released Copilot to all my audience," oh, that's great. But Copilot without this process is not nearly as useful.
Hmm.
And it's a good thing for what it does. I mean, I've seen demos of Copilot. It will go and help you write a presentation more quickly, right? Because you can give it an outline. It will do that, and it'll turn it into slides. Super. That's a cool thing for individual productivity. But that's not the only thing you can get out of this Gen AI technology. You can do much bigger things in your enterprise. And that's what I want to talk to you about, the harder problems.
Yeah, I like that. So we are coming up on our time here, though, and so we can always schedule a follow up if needed. But thank you so much, Joe, for joining us today. This has been fascinating, and to hear again, we really try to just understand what people are actually building out there. Exactly like you said, cut through the hype a little bit. What are people actually building? What are some of the use cases? And sounds like you're right out there on the cutting edge. So again, thank you for your time, and it's been a pleasure to have you on the show.
Thanks, Richard.